when you say like, how was your postpartum journey? The sole postpartum journey was short because then I went straight into pregnancy and postpartum. Every time that my brain just completely fails me, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with postpartum and pregnant brain at the exact same time, which I know there's probably people that can relate to. So, I mean, it's been the most incredible journey of my life becoming a mom and just caring for her and getting to know her and watching her personality and all of the beautiful things that come with motherhood. But I would be lying if I said that it has not also been overwhelming at the same time.
Brigid Titgemeier is a functional medicine registered dietitian, entrepreneur, and mom who's on a mission to help you use food to create health. She's the CEO and founder of Being Functional Nutrition, a digital coaching company that has helped more than 20,000 people use food, targeted nutrition, and lifestyle strategies for better labs, symptoms, and a relationship with food. She also teaches integrative and functional nutrition every fall at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, a curriculum that she co-created 7 years ago. Previously, Brigid was a co-founding dietitian at the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine under Dr. Mike Hyman. Brigid, welcome back. Second time. And it's so good to see you and so good to chat. I mean, we should have started like 15 minutes ago, but we were just chatting about life. And I'm like, should we be recording this? We probably should. Anyways, I just love you. Welcome back. And congratulations on being pregnant with your second.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
Today's podcast, we're going to talk all about postpartum and like what it looks like, how we're feeling. We're both nutritionists who have experienced postpartum depletion and feeling like, oh, like the fog and the overwhelm and all of it. So I just kind of want to chat with you a little bit about your postpartum experience and what it was like the first time around and getting pregnant and how McKinley was as a little girl and then what it's like now.
It is interesting for sure. Honestly, it's overwhelming. I think everyone can relate to that. We had McKinley in May, and so she's still a baby. She's 8 months, and then I got pregnant a few days before I was 3 months postpartum. So when you say like, how was your postpartum journey? It's the sole postpartum journey was short because then I went straight into pregnancy and postpartum. Every time that my brain just completely fails me, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with postpartum and pregnant brain at the exact same time, which I know there's probably people that can relate to. So it's been, I mean, it's been the most incredible journey of my life becoming a mom and just caring for her and getting to know her and watching her personality and all of the beautiful things that come with motherhood. But I would be lying if I said that it has not also been overwhelming at the same time.
Yeah. I remember the transition from 0 to 1 being well, I was slightly rocked with a NICU experience, but being like so that was the biggest change for me, it feels like. I know some people say, like, from 1 to 2, it's even crazier because 'cause you're not, you're man to man, you're not on zone defense, and you'll get there, but I do feel like for me, having so much flexibility in my career and being my own boss and setting my own schedule and having time for myself, then going to, like, really not having childcare except for Chris and I, and being full on with Sebastian and full on with my business and full on with a book tour, it was like, "Whoa." To add a pregnancy on top of that your first time around, like, I applaud you for taking it day by day and for going through the challenges. For you personally, and for Johnny, like, what are some of the biggest challenges and what were some of, like, the biggest blessings?
For us, I would say that one of the big challenges has been that we also decided to move across the country when McKinley was 3 months old. So, like, basically right when I had gotten knowing we weren't intentionally trying to get pregnant, so I kept saying to him, "Oh, I'm breastfeeding, I haven't had a cycle, the statistical chances of me getting pregnant are so low," and, he's done trusting my knowledge of my own fertility. Um, so we just moving across country, we moved back to Cleveland to be closer to family because just even in the first few weeks, we were in Jacksonville, and a lot of our friends are military families that have moved to Jacksonville for the military, and they don't have family support. And I've watched how strong these women are, but also how much harder it makes it for their husbands who are traveling all the time and then to not have additional help. And with having my business and the pressure that comes, like you're talking about with you, of while there is it's so nice to have the flexibility of being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of additional pressure that comes with it when you're trying to be there for your team, you're trying to be there for your baby, you're trying to be there for your husband, for everyone, and it feels like, at least for me, that I've just continually come up short, that I'm never, like, where I wanna be in all of the categories. So for us, it became this decision that we're like, "We're just gonna come back to Cleveland for the summer," and we got an Airbnb and then bought a house and moved back, and so there's just been so much transitions and so many transitions, it feels like I'm a different person today than I was at this time last year, and so just going through it all and the changes that come even with I expected motherhood to be one way, and it's just different than my expectations were, and so having to let go of those expectations. And even I was talking to a friend about it and saying, like, I hate how many times I've told people that there's 3 factors that impact immune health by the age of 4. If you are, breastfed, if you are vaginal birth, and if you, have very minimal antibiotics. And I've said it so many times, like, it's just this easy textbook thing
Yeah.
that I've been taught. And now I just appreciate so many of those hard decisions that you have to make, like, do we wait on antibiotics? Do we treat the ear infection with antibiotics? What is, and I don't think there is a right answer. It comes down to each individual person. So probably the biggest transitions for us have been navigating a move and finding our identities now in Cleveland as a family of 3, about to be 4, and trying to make these decisions together on the best way to care for our child and then also for ourselves.
Yeah. Nothing makes you more open-minded, more empathetic, and more like, "Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that," until you're a mom and you're personally experiencing it. You vacillate and you change your mind a lot, and you, like, wanna follow one direction, you think it's gonna be one way, like you said, and there's all this expectation, this buildup of what it's gonna be like, and it's like all that disappointment falls on the fact that we've, like, created what would be the ideal, and then we're coming up short. And it's what you explained too, like who you were prior to having kids when you had flexibility to like be there for your team and your husband and yourself, that like self bucket starts to shrink. And then there's like resentment and there's like, all these layers of like feeling lost or feeling not feeling like yourself. And it's like, ooh, like how I feel like half of my podcast is interviewing people being like, "Tell me about boundaries. Tell me about time management. Tell me about like tell me about like following through," because it does add a layer of showing up for yourself or like looking at being okay with it not looking the same. And I think that's the difference too is saying like, what does good look like in this period of my life? Where, I remember getting to a place where I was pregnant and I have Toshin, who's like 2 at the time, and then Bash, he's like 4. Nobody has like a consistent school schedule. Chris is a stay-at-home dad, but if I'm even in the room, like I'm the mom, like I'm there, it's like a workout for me. And would be like, "Okay, I'm getting a jogging stroller now, and I'm not like a huge fan of running unless it's after a soccer ball, but I guess I'm pushing 2 kids and being pregnant in a stroller, and I'm calling this a workout, and I'm not gonna be mad at myself that it's not a 90-minute yoga class." Like, I have to just get over it and get consistent. And so, I think it's probably what we're all the moms listening are like, "Yes." Like, we've all been there,
100%.
Brigid, we've all been there, and I would say, like, you know, for you, it sounds like I mean, and you have to tell me, like, th you went through a lot of challenges. You moved your whole my sister-in-law always says, like, "Never do more than 3 big changes in your life," and you had 1 baby, you had a 2nd baby, you moved across the country. What am I missing? There's been, like, a lot for you all at one time. So I guess those are pretty challenging. What have been, like, the beautiful moments, or where have you found, like, your silver linings and your joys in this period of time? And how are you like, kinda, like, riding those highs or continuing to remind yourself of, like, the good?
Honestly, being with McKinley and seeing some of just like the small developmental milestones, just the other day, she started like being able to hands together, and it's those things that make my heart so happy in ways that I've never experienced before that make all of it worth it, even though it feels absolutely so overwhelming, and as you said, like, the self-care bucket absolutely is much smaller, and I have a level of guilt with being pregnant and knowing that decreasing my bucket not only impacts me, but it also impacts this next child. The doctors would always say to me when we would go in for McKinley, like, "I could tell you're a first-time mom because of, like, my focus and the questions that I'm asking and all the specifics and, like, how nervous I was." And this time I'm like, "What week am I?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think comes with it. But from a joy standpoint, I would say, yeah, those small milestones, seeing Johnny with her brings me so much joy, like, watching him step into the dad role is, just the most special thing, in addition to, like, parents become grandparents and my brother and sister become aunts and uncles and Johnny's parents, just loving on her so much, it just all of those things do make it worth it, and I think that holding on to those special memories is something that I try to continue to be present with on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's such a good practice, honestly, because it's like you miss them; they go so fast. I am curious, and this is where we're gonna kinda, like, turn the conversation towards nutrition because you are a registered dietitian, a functional nutritionist. You're someone who I love and look to as a resource for referring clients, for your group programs, for all the things that you are offering. And I know you have a really awesome new software coming out for even like meal prepping or planning for your recipes. Like you're just such a resource. And I think, what I'd like to know from today's conversation is like, what is your nutritional philosophy and how are you implementing that in a good enough and daily type of way so that you feel like you're taking care of yourself and baby number two without kind of being a perfectionist about it?
Yeah, I would say I'm far from a perfectionist about it and have really nailed the idea of giving myself more grace, as a continual pattern that
Yeah.
comes up. But, the day-to-day looks like I mean, supplementation, I think, is the easiest because it's it doesn't take as much time and much effort and much thought, to be able to just make sure that your supplements are stocked, so that's something that I've continued to be super consistent with. The water and hydration piece I've also been, fairly consistent with, but moving to Cleveland and being in the winter here, yeah, I have mine too.
Don't mind me.
But you have helped me so much in understanding also, like, making sure that I'm getting enough sodium and making sure that I'm doing my element every single day, a full packet, which I don't always do when I'm not postpartum and not pregnant, a full packet, but I absolutely need at least that, um, postpartum and during pregnancy. So those are the things that I'm very consistent with. From a nutrition standpoint, I would say that I am consistent with making sure that my food quality is very high, but I can't always say that it's 100% perfectly balanced, where, I might just have 2 eggs and an apple or something that's super quick that isn't necessarily like a full-blown meal that I'm just having to be like, is fine, and also, I have tried for so long to make sure that I'm increasing variety in my diet because of how important that is for the gut microbiome, and I can only prep so many things with trying to also make sure that what I'm prepping are things that McKinley can eat too, on the weekends when I am prepping, and so trying to make things that then she and I are sometimes eating, and Johnny too, on, like, multiple nights in a row is something that I've had to be okay with as well. I would say smoothies have, it's you've been preaching it for so long, and to everything that it's I've learned so much from your journey as a mom that I feel grateful to have a friend like you and obviously, an amazing world-renowned author that's, helps so many people because seeing you go through the journey and have to figure some of these things out has helped me a lot along my journey, and, being able to do the smoothie is such an easy way to get more of those nutrients in, but I'm not skipping on the dark chocolate. That's definitely something. We actually got chocolates from, my mom's neighbor, and they're, like, Belgian chocolates that are milk chocolate that I've eaten too many of the last the last few weeks that McKinley was sick and then got me sick, and so there's just things that I'm just more accepting of than even when I was pregnant with her, where I was really trying to eat no added sugar. Some of it is just sneaking in more with the lack of sleep and stress and those sorts of things.
Oh, I think it's totally normal. I think, you make a really good point about like nutrient quality, and bringing those things into your home and like having them available, but getting used to kind of eating the same like types of meals if you're making them weekly, even if the variety is there, or having things that are really quick and easy, like those eggs or your smoothie. Like those are definitely staples I leaned on. And the reality is you just had a baby and you just are were you breastfeeding McKinley? You were breastfeeding McKinley when you got pregnant. Are you still breastfeeding McKinley or are you not? Like how much is going out nutrition wise for you?
I stopped breastfeeding when I found out that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of guilt around, you know, the awareness, how many women I've seen in practice with having extra nutrient depletion after having a child. And I
Mhm.
felt just so guilty with going straight from one pregnancy to the next without having the time that I thought that I would to rebuild my nutrient stores.
Yeah.
So it was a super hard decision that I still feel guilty of for McKinley, but I only
You ate
breastfed
too
for 3
much.
months and then decided that I would save my nutrients for baby number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Like you can't be everything to everyone, and you have to make the decision to be able to be there for baby number 2 and for yourself as well. So I'm curious, what did you lean on for formula for McKinley? And did you look at, your nutrient status at any point in this pregnancy to see, like, where you were at?
So for formula, we started with Holly and then we changed over to ByHeart pretty soon after that.
Yeah.
So it felt good that you have done the research on ByHeart and it's endorsed by you, and, then the research that I did, I felt like that was probably our best option, so she's on ByHeart, and then we just do additional supplementation with, like, in her bottles with omega-3s and vitamin D and probiotics, and and then immune supporting supplements too, depending on the time. And then for my nutrients, I went to see a friend of mine basically like right when I found out that I was pregnant to one get my nutrients tested and just a full comprehensive panel actually. She's a nurse practitioner and I also went on progesterone because, our first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage, and so when I got testing after that, I had my progesterone levels were in the postmenopausal range. So, I then supplemented with progesterone in my first trimester with McKinley and then elected to do the same. That was a personal choice that she and I talked through, but just knowing that that is a contributor. I also got my thyroid tested to make sure that that was a factor. Even though it was so overwhelming to be pregnant, I also was like, after going through loss, you never want to have to experience that again. And so it was a weird situation where I was like, I'm not to the point of being so excited that I'm pregnant, but I also view every pregnancy as an absolute blessing and gift, especially knowing the hurt that comes with loss, that I wanted to just do as much as I could to have the peace of mind that I was doing everything.
Oh, 100%. Did you look at your iron levels or anything like that? Did
Oh,
you have
yeah, definitely. Iron, vitamin D, omega-3s, folate, vitamin B12, thyroid panel. I think that was the extent of it.
Okay, and I know because we were both advisors for Wenatal that you were taking Wenatal, after your first loss, and it helped you through your pregnancy with McKinley and then, in postpartum there, and you've still remained on that. Where did those numbers fall when you looked at your postpartum numbers, and did you need to add anything to your Wenatal, prenatals, and your omega-3s?
No, my numbers were actually fantastic. So I didn't have to add anything.
Amazing.
And the other amazing thing, because I know that a lot of women stop taking their prenatal when they are postpartum. It's astonishing the number of friends that I have that have told me that they have.
Yeah.
And so in addition to trying to support nutrient dense milk, making sure that obviously you are taking that prenatal is so important, but then also for your own body, if you're not breastfeeding, to be able to recover from that nutrient depletion that I think so many women really underestimate the impact of, and the years of health changes that that can create, even years down the road. But, also for Johnny. Johnny continued taking his prenatal, which I'm so grateful for, since we know that it's that 90-day window before conceiving that not only impacts egg health, but also impacts sperm health. So I feel super grateful, and something that maybe doesn't get as much attention, but for the male to continue taking the prenatal as well. Because when we formulated Weenatal, obviously you know this, but your listeners might not, is that the male prenatal is formulated to essentially be a male multivitamin that has additional nutrients that help to support optimal sperm quality, motility, morphology, and count. And so thinking about the way that I presented it to Johnny was like, just continue taking it because it's giving you everything that you would be getting in your regular multivitamin, just a few extra ingredient or a few extra nutrients at higher quantities that you wouldn't otherwise be getting in a regular multivitamin.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's so, like, it's such a relief, I think, as a parent when you get pregnant and you know that you're supplementing because so much of that those chromosomal abnormalities are coming they come from both of us, you know? It's 2 sets of DNA coming together to make a baby, and we wanna send our best sets in, if so to say, and it's a relief. I'm so glad that you both were on it, and I'm so happy that you're progressing so well in your 2nd pregnancy.
Thank you, thank you. But you're still breastfeeding fully, right? Because 'Cause you're 6 months postpartum? 6 and a
Uh,
half.
Tosh or Julian will be 8 months on the 25th, and I am still breastfeeding. I did have the benefit of being able to breastfeed, Sebastian, I went 18 months, and then Tasha in 22, and then Julian, we're cruising, and he's a good eater, so I'm, like, kinda grateful because it's so funny with your 3rd, like, with the 1st, you're like, "Okay, we're introducing 1 meal a day," and, like, the 6 months, and then 2 meals a day at 7, and, like, 3 meals a day at 8, and then with your 2nd, you're like, "Okay, he's eating, like, give him some stuff," and then with the 3rd, you're like, "Okay, today you're eating," and then you every time the other 2 eat and you're like, "What's not an allergen? Okay, let's give this a go." And you just like, you just go for it. It's like such a different vibe and feeling, and, there's so much benefit. Like, I remember when I was trying to sleep train Sebastian, and it was like, I'd freak out and I wouldn't wanna do it, and I would just, like, wouldn't hold the boundary, and so then it never really happened, and to this day, he's my worst sleeper. Like, this morning, he woke up at 5 and he was like, "Hey, mom, it's real windy outside," and I was like, "Oh my god, go back to sleep." You know, like, it
Wait,
was
because you're saying, like, you didn't want him to be crying because you felt like you needed to go and comfort him.
yeah, like, I had all this I wasn't really tuning in to my child and me as much as I have been able to with Julian, like, just 2, a couple more kids, and I'm like, "Okay, like, I can I'm not looking to others to be like, 'Well, what does the expert say about sleep training?' And I need to bring in this person, or I need to follow this," and, like, of course, you take the taking care of babies course. My friend Melissa had Sleep Shop OC. I, like, have her on my podcast, like, I did the things because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to sleep." Um, and then the 2nd time around, I, like, tried to do it on my own and totally failed, and then this time around, I was like, "We have too many children." Like, and I went totally off. I, like, let Julian completely co-sleep until 8 months, like, 7 months, and then after Christmas, I was like, "Okay, bud, we don't have a room for you, but I got you this mini crib, and you're sleeping in our walk-in closet." But basically, it's pretty amazing how when you continue to have children, you're just like, "Okay, sit in the chair, you're eating food. Okay, you're eating what everyone else is eating, all 3 meals. Okay, it's time to sleep train you." You tune into you and you don't really listen to as many of the experts. You, like, consider yourself more of an expert, which is kind of cool.
It's so cool, and I think that That is something that I've tried to do is not read a lot of baby books, like, not a lot of parenting books, and I'm not trying to act like I know everything, but I think there is something to figuring it out and seeing, like, what works for you and that child and your family
Yeah.
that is, like, the intuitive part that maybe sometimes people aren't as confident in because they wanna know what the experts say.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely because I host this podcast and because I do actually I love parenting books. I probably should read as many as I read. But I feel like I have a better filter,
Mhm.
5 years in. Poor Sebastian, he's like my guinea pig, right? And then but then you have different personalities. So then Tashin rolls in and he's really strong. He's a silly guy, a funny guy, like always like the potty talk, poopy this, poopy that, like walking around with all his tools. Like he is just like a circus clown. He's super funny. And but he's also like, I'm not gonna eat that. Yep, nope, get it off of my plate. I'm not gonna eat it. And you're like, "What?" Sebastian would eat anything and everything, and Tasha's like, "Hell no, mom." You know?
So
And
what do you do? I'm like, I just thought that your kids maybe ate, like, perfectly.
no, with him, it's been a lot of going back to the basics. Like, it's literally like what I realized was that life was so crazy, and so I'll give you this advice. Life was so crazy when it was coming when Tashin was being born, because he was born, and he was born, and then we bought our house, and then my mom's really good friend was a contractor, and he's like, "I can help you, do some work on your house, but I'm retiring at the end of the year, so we got a boogie." So I had to like run my biz, get back from maternity leave, run my business to pay for our mortgage, to pay for the house we were renting, which was my mother-in-law's house, to pay for our like construction that I was so overwhelmed and I was making all these decisions. And so I would like just make the food and put it in front of Tasha and be like, here's your dinner, And with Bash, it was like, we were in our rent controlled apartment in LA. I think he like raised our rent like $25 a year or something crazy. And I'd be like, Beshi, come up with mommy, make the roasted veggies. Like it was like a whole like taste this, try this, like be involved in this. Let's walk to Whole Foods. I used to call him the mayor. Like we would leave our little apartment because our apartment was the parking lot of Whole Foods. I'd roll him in the stroller into Whole Foods, let him pull stuff off the like, whatever, like the apple cart or like pull the greens, put it in the bag. Like he's like knew our checkout guy. Like it was a totally different experience for him. And then Tashin's like dropped in suburbia, born on a cul-de-sac. Cool. He's getting a different experience. Lots of kids there, whatever. But when it came to food, it was like Chris was either being like, breakfast for dinner, or I was being like, here it is, out of a crock pot, all stewed together. And he'd be like, ew, no, I don't, like he just didn't have the exposure to the touch, the feel, the taste, the crunch, the whole thing. And I would say like he saw me cook, but he didn't he had Chris serving him up a lot more, and then me just, like, just being putting it on the plate and putting it on the table versus him being involved in it, and so, I would say, that's something I'm doing a little differently with Julian is I'm talking about the food like I did with Bash. I mean, he's so little and, McKinley's so little, like, they're not gonna be, like, climbing up into a kitchen tower right yet, but
For sure.
you're gonna have a good opportunity actually to get them both involved, at the same time because they're gonna be so close. Uh, but I would just say throw your second in an ergo. I love to cook with a baby in an ergo, just watch out for the stove, and then
Yeah.
get McKinley up in that kitchen tower, and they'll be fine. But I think it just going back to those basics, like, okay, exposing them to these foods because it's modeling, exposure, and modeling and exposure that really is the driver for kids' acceptance of food. And I took it for granted with Sebastian. Like I took it for granted that I love to cook in the kitchen. I took it for granted that we go to Whole Foods and Brentwood Farmers Market together. Like it was all just like, this is what we do, you know? And it is what we do. It is what I did with Tashin, but he just it was a lot busier of a life with a lot more stress and a lot more like, "Ah, throw it on the table. This is crazy. We have 2 kids."
I
You know?
can't even imagine all that you were going through when he was born.
And that was probably my hardest. I feel a little bit a mom guilt, here we go. I feel a little bit bad, there's times, but there's some resilience that I know he'll have because of all of that, which, it is what it is. We're just all trying our best, to provide and to figure it out and to find balance and to have boundaries. And I mean, yeah, it's kinda crazy, but I do feel like right now, and we were talking before the podcast, where I'm, like, coming out of it. I'm coming out of the haze and the f of and feeling like, "Okay," like, I'm feeling strong, I'm at my normal weight, I'm, like, I could have some abs. I gotta really work on some abs here.
Oh my God, Kelly, you look amazing.
But I mean, I feel good. I just don't feel it. I'm not gonna feel as strong as I did prior to Bash, of course, but, like, I really like, and that's why I'm, like, pounding the protein left and right and drinking the amino acids and drinking the protein powders and eating grass-fed beef for breakfast and, like, all that crazy stuff, but yeah, it feels good to kinda be coming out the other end and feeling like, "Okay, I we're getting in a groove. We're getting in a groove."
I'm so
So
happy for you, especially because it's such a long journey with how long you breastfed.
yeah.
It's like 5 years of your life.
Yeah, and I had a loss before Sebastian too, so
Oh, I
it
remember.
started yeah, I got pregnant on my first book tour, which if people were following along back then, they're like, "Wasn't that like a decade ago?" Basically. Yeah.
No, I remember because we were at the conference together when you were first pregnant with Bash and you hadn't really told anyone and you were feeling really nauseous that day.
Oh,
And you're
yeah,
like,
New
I haven't
York.
really told anyone this, but I'm pregnant with Bash, but we're not telling people because of our first pregnancy.
Yes, no, I think literally you were one of the first people I told. Like, did I tell my mom first or you? I think I took that pregnancy test in New York, which is so crazy.
I know you said that you hadn't told a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to it. Like, I'm obviously in, like, toddlerhood and McKinley is little. So let's talk about how you are prepping on the weekends and what your philosophy is in regards to stocking your fridge and making sure that all this good stuff is around for you and your family. Obviously, the smoothies are easy, eggs are easy. It's never going to be perfect, but like if you were to walk us through cuz I know you're doing your like meal prep software. Do you just pick proteins and veggies that you always love? Like how does it work?
Yeah, so this is a little challenging to talk about without talking about the meal prepping software because I am using that.
Okay, great.
And so that's we're coming out with the Being Collective, which is a meal planning membership that allows for people to basically take blood sugar balancing recipes and then get automated shopping lists. So at bare minimum, I'm like planning out the smoothies. I like to have smoothies for lunch. So
Mhm,
I'm planning out a few different smoothies throughout the week so that it changes obviously like the flavors, even though the ingredients don't change too much.
mhm.
And most of the time it's things that we already have stocked. There's very little things that I need to continue to rebuy unless it's like, getting more BL by Kelly protein powder or nut butter or things that aren't on a every week basis.
Right.
And then the dinners, I'm trying to just pick 2 to 3 dinners, then plan for leftovers, and then make sure that there's room for nights that are just kind of like breakfast for dinner type of nights, where last night, for instance, McKinley and I just both Johnny was out of town, so McKinley and I just shared a dinner where I made scrambled eggs as our protein source because I'm running low on groceries, and then I had purple sweet potato fries that I had prepped over the weekend. I had some cannellini beans that I had mashed for her, and then I just added to my eggs, and then there's one other thing that we had. Um, I can't remember the 3rd thing that we had. Oh, roasted cauliflower
Mhm.
that I had made a few nights ago that I just did 2 heads of cauliflower so that we had it. So that, she doesn't always eat everything that I'm presenting to her, so then I ends up giving her the Serenity Kids food pouches, which obviously I've learned from you and absolutely love for the convenience, but I also feel like I'm ruining myself because she almost, like, knows now that if she doesn't eat, then she gets it, and she loves the pouches.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like at first, I was just embracing the idea of doing baby-led weaning combined with like, the purees,
Mhm.
and now I'm like, "Did I ruin her?"
No.
Which is
There's no chance that you ruined her. I
There's
would
worse things in the world than a Serenity Kids food pouch, obviously, that is so high in nutrient density, and I feel really good about because of the ingredient quality, but I just wanna make sure she still is, developing those motor skills.
do you think she's getting totally full on her Serenity pouch, and so she's done after it? Because I would say maybe, one of the things that I'm because Chris loves a pouch because he just doesn't like to clean up the we don't have a dog, and I always joke with my sister that, like, "You've never cleaned a floor until if you don't have a dog." Like, our kids just, like, throw their food off their high chair at this age, and they're like, "No, don't want it. It's in between their legs. It's smushed on their stuff. You, like, wanna get them naked before." It's like a whole to-do, right?
So true.
But I told Chris I don't want him to, like, give Julian the pouch. I don't want him Julian to hold the pouch and I mean, he can hold it and suck it, but, like, I would rather have you seen those green baby spoons that, they look like a leaf almost? I
Yeah,
squeeze it on
we're
the yeah,
using something like that.
I squeeze it on the top of it. It kinda looks like it's an ice cream cone. I'll link it in the show notes, but, and we squeeze the pouch on that and give it to him, like, that way he can use eye coordination and bring it to his mouth as a puree. But I give it to him I give it to him at the same time. I just wouldn't reward her with the pouch if she doesn't eat. I would just, like, bring it out, like, not make it a thing because like, she can have it if she wants, and if honestly, like, she's touching a few pieces of the food, and putting it in her mouth, but they're not really getting it in at this age, you
This
know?
is true. I
It's
mean, the floor
again,
is definitely getting the most of it, and it does kill that the food waste does really kill me.
yeah, and I think a lot of us too, like, go like, "Oh, we'll just, like, cover the high chair tray with a bunch of stuff," and, like, one of the things that I started doing with Julian was, like, doing, like, 1 or 2 of each thing, but, like, really small, or, like, baby led weaning style, like, 1 cauliflower, 1 sweet potato fry, like, 1 whatever, a piece of egg, and, like, if it ends up in their mouth and they taste it, you're winning. Like, it's just about them tasting it and having exposure to it, and if I'm sure she loves getting a Serenity pouch because she's actually getting it in, and she's like, "This is delicious, and I'm filling up, and it's nutrient dense." You're not I mean, this is the stuff I used to think about with Sebastian too. Um,
I'm such a first-time mom.
yeah. No, it's just normal, like, just know that that's so normal because that's exactly the stuff I would worry about. I'd be like, "Oh my god, like, this isn't r" like, "I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that." You may get to a point where I mean, like, Tashin got to a point where he didn't want any pouches. Bash would have eaten those things until he was, like, 4. At one point, I was like, "We're done with the pouches." I feel like Julian will be the same as Sebastian, but it's high quality stuff and she's getting that nutrient density in and as long as like she's at least picking up the food and trying to put it in her mouth and chewing it, like you're good anyways. So, yeah, I don't think you need to overthink it at all. As long
How are you doing with Julian with food?
So with Julian, like he'll wake up, I'll feed him right away. We'll go downstairs. The boys will have breakfast before school and I'll just always put him in the high chair if anyone's eating. If anyone's eating, he's in his high chair and I'm just like putting a couple things on the tray, just major exposure. And he will like hold a chicken sausage and gnaw on it and then it'll be on the floor and he'll like put a blueberry in his mouth and spit it out. Like it's not like, I'll get, like, 1 blueberry in a diaper and be like, "Winning," like, it's not I think with your first you're worried, like, "Well, how much is really getting in?" And so then I'm supplementing with other things. He's giving me, like, real baby poops because of, purees, and I love Serenity. I've incorporated some of Sarah Bareilles, which has DHA, added to them, and I just saw one biodynamic food. There was like one called Biodynamic that I snagged at Whole Foods the other day too, which looks pretty good. If it's primarily like vegetables or the amount of fruit is smaller, I'm okay with it,
Mhm.
So but feeding is like a whole thing. Sleeping is a whole thing, schedules are a whole thing, and like it's you're never on a like, you're on a schedule and you get it for a minute, and then there's, like, a leap, or you need to drop a nap, or they need to have real food now, and it's, like, this whole thing, you know? It's like you by the 3rd, you kinda sorta let it go, and you're like, "Alright, well, who's eating right now? Everyone's eating, it's a mealtime, sit here." Like, you're kind of fussing, "It's been 2.5 hours, let's go try a nap." Like, you're
Mhm.
not as tied to the outcome of, like, w of tracking stats on your kid almost, you know? You're just letting them kind of flow a little bit more, which has been nice and made me crazy to think, like, "There's a 5% chance I have 4." But I do feel strong about having my brain back and being able to get back to work and, and all that. I don't know, it's hard to decide. Mostly it's feeling good being selfish, and I'm excited for you for, like, June when you're gonna be, postpartum and you're gonna be able to go, like, "What does Bridget need?" Like, when you think about that, like, what do you daydream of?
I daydream of it just, I guess, like sleeping through the night and the basics that I typically would have taken for granted before, but having like a great workout schedule that I currently do not have and have no excuse for, but just um, it hasn't. That's like one thing that I'm still figuring out.
You do have an excuse for it. I think you know what's crazy is I think even with lack of sleep, even with multiple young children, like, I don't think people there are people who have a lot of help or aren't entrepreneurs or have a specific schedule and have a full-time nanny, and they book that time of working out in, but when your life is flux and flow of an entrepreneur and creating a program and you're launching a software and, like, your husband's traveling and I know you moved home to get more help, like, I think what your day-to-day life looks like, that there's a season for all of that. You just got your body rocked. Like, you had a baby and then got right pregnant again. Like, you have an excuse. Like, deep breath, it's a season. You know what I mean?
No, that is a good perspective. And to the other thing that I have been super conscientious of that I Johnny and I have joked is maybe like part of me getting pregnant so quickly, um, postpartum, is that I was super in tune with trying to decrease the cortisol effect of the stress that your body goes through with being pregnant, of being postpartum. I was very in tune with that, and so I wasn't working out in the mornings. I was choosing to, like, sleep as long as I could and doing things just at a much slower pace, and, like, trying and my movement was getting outside for walks, in nature and those kinds of things, trying to also expose McKinley to the nature. And so I think too that, not continuing to place, not having the pressure of like waking up at 5 a.m. after you haven't fully slept the night before to do a workout when women don't realize how much their bodies have been through that like maybe it isn't the season for that. Maybe the season is just prioritizing sleep and knowing that you'll get back to your exercise schedule. So that's kind of how I've been rationalizing it in my head, but there is room for more movement for me for sure.
Let's, if you don't mind, like, can you walk me through, like, what it was like going back to work, when you went back to work, what your childcare situation looks like?
Yeah, so I went back at 6 weeks, and when I say 6 weeks, it was actually a little before 6 weeks, like, I was popping into my team meetings and things like that probably around, like, 4 weeks. We were in the thick of working with my web development team on launching the meal planning software, and so it was something that, like, I just felt, that I had to be part of. But there's also flexibility, like you said. So, when I wasn't working full 8-hour days when I went back to work at 6 weeks. Johnny took paternity leave, and he took, like, a longer paternity leave, so he was our primary caretaker and took care of McKinley, and then we continued to try to do it together where, like, he would take breaks to work out while I would watch her during the day and those sorts of things, and, even though we moved back to Cleveland, everyone in my family still works, so the support that we have is typically, like, a week
Emotional
ago. Emotional 100%, and then, like, weekends and a week ago when McKinley and I were both sick, my mom, had us sleep over 2 nights so that she could wake up with McKinley in the middle of the night because Johnny was out of town. So, it was I mean, having that, has been so helpful. And then once we moved to Cleveland, because we were living in an Airbnb and then that one had mold in it. So then we moved in with my parents for a month and Johnny was the primary caretaker throughout that. And I was working from home.
Yeah.
And then we moved into a different Airbnb for a month and the same thing was still the scenario. Once we got into our house, that's when my sister's roommate started coming, like 3 days a week. She's building up her private practice, so it worked out really nicely, and she would come for, like 6 hours at a time, 4 hours at a time, just depending on her schedule. So that's been what we have had throughout, and, now that Johnny is fully back to work, we are, this actually just, like, 2 weeks ago is the first time that we've kind of just compiled, like, my neighbor's daughter, my mom's, neighbor, my sister's roommate, to take on, like, an 8 to 4 schedule that is last week was the first week that we did, like, full 5 days.
Yeah. And what did that feel like? Uh,
Um, when Johnny's out of town, it still feels overwhelming even with the 8 to 4, because I just go from working all day to then doing everything else, but, when he's here, it feels I mean, so amazing, and also so I know some of my friends struggle with having babysitters and people taking care of their kids because of, feeling like they want to be the ones doing it, and for me, I actually love like, my mom's neighbor is the most amazing, nurturing person, and I love seeing her with McKinley, and in some ways, I feel like she has more patience with her actually than I even would with the activities and the games that they're playing, that I just feel like I just said to her this morning, I'm like, "I'm just so grateful for how well you take care of her, and it means so much." And, so that's our current situation, and it feels really good.
oh my gosh, that's really beautiful. That's really, really beautiful to hear that you can see such a benefit and found such great people to support your family. Like, what I've learned as an entrepreneur is that you don't have to get up at 5 to get your workout in, to then go in and be the boss of your business from 8 to 4, 100% there. Like, you've built this flexibility to be able to say, like, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna be on this call and this call and this call. I'll be off having a workout at this time, and then I'll be back at this time." Like, that's, I think, what I wish I would have learned a little sooner in the last, like, 6 years, I would say, is being able to be like, "Wait, I've been doing this for 11 years and I built this up to have freedom for me and everyone else is taking an hour or time for themselves. Like, I need to carve that out for me too." If I feel most comfortable while I have care, great. I'll do it then. I used to be like, "Oh, I have to wake up." I have a Peloton in my garage. I have to wake up and, like, go get in there and get it done before them. And now it's like, I have let go of drop-offs for school, and I used to have to, like, do drop-off and pick up, and then I would have a meeting, and I'd be like, "I can't do it," and then I'd feel like I'd fail our kids because 'cause I'd be like, "I'll be there at pickup," and then I wouldn't because 'cause I'd get stuck on a call and Chris would have to go, and I had to just be like, It's better that I do what I say I'm gonna do than not show up." And so
Uh-huh.
we just made it a thing, where, and this is me letting go of massive amounts of mom guilt for not being a full stay-at-home mom who's homesteading and, like, homeschooling, 'cause
I know there is guilt.
I am literally in I look at that and I'd be like, "That is the biggest gift you could ever give your children," and my mom was, like, full on and stay at home and all that, but I do know that I feel so alive doing what I do and working with clients and being on podcasts and writing books and putting out content. Like, I wanna help other people, so I need to stand strongly in those, like, in my feet to say, like, "This is what I'm meant to do too." And
Mhm.
that's okay. So I've let go of drop-offs. Now Chris does drop-offs every day, like, to school for Bash and Toshin, and he'll take the baby with him, and so they'll leave at 7:30 for drop-off, and so we've kind of got a little bit of a flow where the minute I let go of that, I went, "I now have totally reset who I am for the rest of the day because I was able to get this in." And I used to say like, "Okay, the minute 7:30 hits and they're out the door now, I'm gonna schedule a call at 7:45 or at 8:15." And now it's like I'm allowing myself to push that back, and past me would be like, "Ooh, we really wanna have that call? Okay, I'll give it to you at 8 o'clock." And now I'm like, "No, no, I'm not." And so it doesn't happen every day, but, like, even if it's 3 or 4 days a week of those drop-offs, I'm like, "Boom." Like, I feel really good about that. And
I
that's my
love
new
that for
routine.
you.
You know? So, it just it again, it's like, am I overpromising the drop off, and am I overpromising that I'm gonna, like, wake up at a 5 AM alarm if I was up with a baby at 4? Like, no, like, how do I find the time and say, like, "This is where it's gonna work for me, and if I really want it, I can't book calls at that time,"
Yeah.
you know?
It's so interesting too because I feel like it's there's just a different dynamic as the female probably that's working compared to, like, when it's the male. Because I have a lot of stay-at-home mom friends who it's like their husbands, this is their schedule, and their husbands are going to the gym after, and, like, they're just, like, taking care of the kids, and I feel like there's an additional challenge when you're working and like, I try to prioritize Johnny's workouts when he's where I'm like, "I'll come down and stay with McKinley so that you can do your workout," because I feel bad that he's with her all day, and it's like, it's so hard to set those boundaries.
Yeah. And I think that's hard too, is like when you're on your own, when you're single, when you're just married, when you have your own life, you really get to like dictate your schedule to a certain extent. Like, I think about like, wow, there were certain times when I wasn't like really super consistent with my working out and certain times where I was really consistent with working out. And I'm like, man, I had so much freedom. And now we kind of have this schedule because and school is back, but for him, it's like he needs to go surf, he needs to go to yoga, like, and we need
Mhm.
to put that on the calendar actually for him, or his time gets eaten away too.
Of
So
course.
I don't know. I mean, it's I think you have to take it one day, 1 week at a time has like been my approach, just because every week is different, but you can always find like a couple hours for yourself and a couple hours for your partner.
Very true. Especially when you're approaching it as such a team like you guys are.
What are you guys doing together to like make that happen?
Well, at first, it was super helpful because Johnny would wake up with me in the middle of the night every night, and I would pump and he would feed her so I could go back to bed sooner because pumping typically took less time than, like, feeding her, so he'd feed her a bottle, and that actually helped so much. Um, McKinley also has just been naturally a pretty good sleeper, like, we haven't created a schedule for her necessarily, we just kind of have been more in tune with, like, does she seem hungry? Does she seem tired? And then, it might end up backfiring for us, but that's just, kind of the route that we've taken, so she's fortunately been a pretty good sleeper. It's just been, more of a transition in, like, the last month because of her getting sick and then just being thrown off. She's teething. So I think those are some of the factors now. But for the most part, I honestly haven't put a lot of effort into getting great sleep because then 3 months in, I stopped breastfeeding, so I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night to pump and, was just trying to focus on, like, sleeping for this baby and the choices that I'm making holistically for my family instead of trying to be like 100% for McKinley and then, it coming at a deprivation to my own sleep. So if she does wake up, and Johnny's home, he typically will be the one that gets her. And then I'll do the early morning shift or vice versa. We just switch off. And then yeah, I mean, the last month has been rough because he's been traveling a lot and she's been sick, and then she got me sick, so that's when we went to my mom's, and I was just like,
You're
"I
like,
need help."
that's great that you have her. That's great that you have her. Oh,
Yeah, so, I mean, and then days that I don't get great sleep, I try to take a nap, like, I try to take a 30-minute nap in the afternoon to carve out just so that I don't feel completely run down then going to the rest of the afternoon and the night.
oh, so amazing that you can shut your brain down like that. Like, I am so jealous. Like, I was the person even in college when people are like, "We're gonna go back and take a nap," and I'm like, "Doo, doo, doo, what are you guys up to?" Like, I'm here on campus and everyone's, like, in their dorm room napping. I'm like, "Why is this what is happening?" It's daytime. It was always so hard for me, and it's so good for your brain. I remember working with some NFL players for the combine, or soon to be NFL players for the combine, and I did their nutrition plan for this, like, quarterback camp, and it was like they brought in a Stanford sleep specialist who was like, "You are all napping after your lunch, before your, like, throwing drills to, like, basically, like, solidify these, like, all the neural pathways that, you everything you learned in your practices prior to this," and it was pretty amazing. They all had, like, these little air mattress sleep pads and would fall
Wow.
asleep, and I would just be like, "How are all of these, like, grown men sleeping?" But it was awesome. Like, it was like they got on a baby schedule. It was like, "They're going down now, they're getting up." Lights would go on, they'd wake them up, and they'd get them back out on the field. It was really cool. And I
That
love
is
that, but
awesome.
I just can't I mean, I guess I can keep trying. It's gonna be like meditation for me where I was like, "I never napped." And then I'm like, "Oh, it's a thing now."
I hope. I mean, I love napping. It's the best. So I hope that that could be in your future.
Yes, please. All right. So reflecting on your first postpartum journey, which kind of turned into your second pregnancy, is there anything that you are really proud that you did and you want to do the second time around? And then is there anything you wish you would have done differently?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is that taking is advocating for McKinley's health for her at specific times that she's needed it. Like for instance, there's just been different doctor's appointments that we've gone into where the first recommendation, like she had a rash the one time that the doctor said was a fungal rash, and she was like, "I'll just prescribe a antifungal cream," and then I go and pick it up and it's nystatin, and I'm like, "I am not putting nystatin on." She made it sound like this little thing, and then, I mean, nystatin is an aggressive antifungal, and McKinley was like 3 months old at the time. So I'm like, well, if it's fungal rash, then it seems like we just need some some powder to dry up the moisture since the fungus thrives in moisture, and in a few days that was improved. So there's a number of scenarios, like even when she got the ear infection, where I said to the doctor, like, I'm not jumping on antibiotics right away. Let's wait a few days, since 30 to 40% of ear infections clear on their own, to see if she is able to clear on her own. Before then, we give her the antibiotic. So there's just been, and then we ended up needing to give her the antibiotic because it didn't clear on its own. And at that point, I was like, okay, I understand the consequences of not treating an ear infection that's not clearing on its own. So
Yeah.
I think I feel proud of having the confidence to be an advocate for her in ways that I think are super important, and that even like our doctor had told me about this ear scope on Amazon that I ended up buying for her for $30, that he was like, you could just take a picture and then send me the picture so that I can see if it's clearing. And I was like, why don't they just give this to all parents? He's like, 'cause it's not billable. Like we don't make money on it for the insurance reimbursable model. So it's those types of things that I feel really good about. I feel good about just focusing on keeping my stress lower. 3 months for the 3 months that I was breastfeeding, and trying to really focus on like the highest nutrient density possible, because I was just super focused on like how can I create the most nutrient dense milk. And um yeah, I would say those are the things that come to mind as far as things that, and I would also say the way that Johnny and I have just navigated trying to like listen to intuitively what she needs versus being so bound to a specific schedule. I think that that's not only been good for her, but also good for us. And then as far as things that I would change, I mean, I would change the expectations going in. Like I said, that it's not this like functional medicine textbook, that it's real life, and that there will be instances that these things come up, and that we're going to do the best that we possibly can to offset the antibiotics with other things that we can add to, if they're necessary, and those kinds of things, so that I don't feel so guilty when they come about and I'm forced with the decision that leaves me crying for days. So I think those would probably be the main things that come to mind.
You know what? You bring up a really good point about advocating for your children. I feel like there are times, the first time around, the second, probably the third too, you where you wanna rely on your physician, your pediatrician, the doctor who's caring for you or your child, and maybe you make a decision that you're like, don't feel great about. But I think what you have the benefit of is like having the knowledge to know that like this is a really strong antifungal and I might not need to do this quite yet. And it's taking a beat. I would just say for any moms out there, like you always want to quick fix or you want your child to be well or you don't want them to be in pain or you don't want any problems. But I feel like the pause the pause that you have the ability to take a pause and go like, "Well, what is this? Do I really need this? Are there any other options?" And just like look a little deeper so that you can advocate for your child, I think is such a great piece of advice. I will give a shout out to Dr. Song. Elisa Song was on my podcast. She's a functional pediatrician and she has a blog and I found these like Mullein garlic drops and they're for ear infections and they're homeopathic. Like I'm at a place where I I don't I deal with my children being sick unless I'm like really scared that there's a problem. Like Julian had croup in altitude and he hadn't been to altitude and he hadn't had croup and I wasn't sure if it's RSV or COVID. So we did go get like him tested at the urgent care in Mammoth and like figured it out over Christmas. But like for the most part, like I'm not really doing the same sort of like check-ins as I did with Bash. It's just like, we'll see you in a couple months. Okay, we're
Mhm.
good. Measure away. We're out of here. And I'm really leaning into like, how can I use these like ancient remedies that are natural to support my kid's immune system. And so that's a great one if you ever have if kids' ears are ever red or they're like rubbing at it or you think maybe it's an ear infection, like it's a lot of them are viral. But that's a hard thing to do, but that pause really does it makes a difference in our parenting and how, like the solutions we come up with.
It's, like, hard to go against societal norms sometimes,
Mhm.
and when you're talking about even, like, weighing things out of, like, treating, not treating, like, when we chose to not treat, I got opinions from people, like friends or family members who were like, "But she's in pain now, so, like, don't you wanna just give her the antibiotics so that she's out of the pain?" And it's like, well, what is the short-term consequence versus the long-term consequence? Is short-term treating her with the antibiotic that gets her out of the pain and an ear infection that could clear on its own, is that actually in her best interest when I also know that statistically it increases her risk of asthma and eczema and allergies and autoimmune disease and so many other factors that I think that you have to always weigh out the long-term and the short-term sacrifices that you're making and being in a little bit of pain sometimes or using the garlic drops before can it's not necessarily like a societal norm but something that I think is important to help to advocate for them since they'll have to deal with the allergies and asthma and other things that come up later on down the road.
Right. It's an exercise that makes you pause and take a minute, and then you feel better about your decision. I have had times when I'm, like, going with societal norms, or I'm going really fast, or I'm not thinking things through in the way that then as a parent, you're like, "What was I thinking?" And it brings you to your knees, and you're constantly just, like, reflecting and trying to grow, I guess, you
Yeah,
know?
it's a very big growth journey for sure.
Look, oh my gosh, I've taken so much of your time up. I'm so sorry, but let's talk about your meal, planning software that brought you back to work after, like, 4 weeks.
Well, it's been something that I've been wanting to create for years, but now actually as a mom, I see like that much more value in it. So it's basically it came from running like the blood sugar resets and seeing that people can obviously stick to something short term, but that eating well in order to feel good is just harder to maintain. So the Being Collective is basically a weekly meal planning program that helps you and your family to plan for blood sugar balancing meals that then creates an automated shopping list for. And then, you can filter based off of different meal preferences like gluten free or low FODMAP or dairy free or other things that you're specifically sticking to. And then gives you meal prep uh, instructions as well to try to save time and then also decrease the money that you're spending on groceries with being able to actually plan for how many meals you're making. So the goal is to just help with being more consistent and not having to put as much thought into it. My team of dietitians and I create like pre-made plans so that people can then just go in and edit the pre-made plans so that they don't have to create their own, and we create new ones in order to help them do that. So it's, I'm really excited. I think that in addition to the meal planning, we also have weekly coaching calls. It's a way to, just be part of community and to get coaching, and to try to make your life easier in a way that you're able to stay consistent without being perfect. Like I'm not filling in every single meal on the grid every single week, but being able to at least get some of them in to then get that automated shopping list has been such a time saver for me. So I'll include a link for you that, well, you'll include the link, but I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
And I hope that people enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. So, running through your day and running through your meal planning software, you're taking your neonatal supplements, you're using about a packet of Element, you're staying super hydrated. Are you drinking caffeine or are you not off caffeine?
Yeah, I'm drinking matcha.
Okay, you're drinking matcha.
I
And
drink like 1 or 2 matchas a day.
okay, when it comes to meal planning in this pregnancy period, postpartum period, are you leaning into a certain amount of protein a day? Do your meal plans like reflect that? Are you leaning into specific types of protein or specific types of foods to get the nutrients you know you need?
Yeah, so I'm doing a scoop of BL, 1 to 2 scoops of BL by Cali protein every day, and, that in smoothies or, like, in yogurt or other things that I'm adding it to. I also will typically add collagen to things that are just easy to add collagen as well. I've been really increasing both of those since having a C-section with just trying to increase, like, wound healing, and, knowing also that, being on NSAIDs for as long as I was. I tried to get off of them as quickly as possible, but the impact that that has on gut lining, like, there's just so many factors that impact nutrient absorption outside of even just being or your nutrient status outside of the toll that's giving all of your nutrients to your baby either through being pregnant or breastfeeding, entails. So thinking about, like the wound healing components, even just tissue healing if you're giving vaginal or you're birthing vaginally, all of those things I think, have to be taken into account in addition to the toll on the adrenals. Like all these things decrease our nutrient absorption. So I find that doing weanenatal, of course, is so important in addition to the omega-3 fatty acids, but then also doing the Be Well by Kelly protein to get those additional amino acids that are so important for healing the gut lining so that my nutrient absorption can actually be increased to the fullest amount possible. I take a probiotic and a prebiotic to just try to support my microbiome. I'm taking MitoPure for by Timeline for my mitochondrial health and just like overall energy since I do feel a little more fatigued right now, and um, additional magnesium at night. And I think those are the big hitters.
That's your stack. I like that stack. I like that stack a lot. When it comes to animal protein, like, are you leaning into specific proteins right now, or what do you
Oh, you
normally
asked about protein. I thought that originally you were asking me about supplements. My
That's
postpartum and
helpful.
pregnant brain. For protein, I'm trying honestly, when you texted me a few months ago, I don't know if you remember, you texted me a picture of your ground beef in the oven, and you were like, "I'm adding this to my smoothies every morning." And I
Yeah,
thought you meant that you were, like, adding them to your smoothies, and I was like,
that's
"Why?" But then understood, like, a few seconds later, oh, she's adding it
I'm
alongside her
eating it
smoothies.
alongside. I literally just am eating, like, loads of red meat. Yeah.
So I'm trying to do the same and maybe I don't think I'm meeting your quota, but primarily in the form of just grass-fed beef or bison as the easiest way that I can get it in, like easier to prepare, I mean. And then doing a lot of Greek yogurt actually, and then if I do Greek yogurt, then I typically add additional protein to that in the form of, collagen or Be All by Cali protein, and then, smoothies for protein, and then I'm doing a lot of eggs. I'm trying to do eggs at least, 4 to 5 times a week for the additional choline as well, and, um like organic rotisserie chicken, I'm relying on more than typical. I'm also actually doing a lot of beans. I love beans and lentils, so I'll do, I'll prepare like a trio bean mix that I get from Whole Foods, and I'll do like 3 cans of it that I just rinse in advance and then put in a Tupperware to try to make life a little bit easier. So I'll do that with like sauerkraut and some hot sauce as a mid-afternoon snack with some nutritional yeast to try to get like 15 grams of protein in mid-afternoon. And then yeah, I would and, like, organic sausages have been an easy way. I have a lot of organic turkey meat that I keep in my refrigerator that I'll do with rolled up vegetables and then hummus as a snack as well. So I'm not counting my protein that I'm eating every day, but I'm pretty oh, and then salmon. I'm salmon and sardines. I eat a ton of sardines, and actually McKinley loves sardines too, which I feel like is one of my biggest, like, mom pride moments.
Yes, yes, so good.
So, canned salmon, salmon fillets, then, and then sardines as well would be additional protein sources that I'm doing several times a week. But super easy ways that you can add, protein. I mean, it's not ways that are, taking a ton of time. For instance, like the other night I made lentil pasta that had 18 grams of protein, and then I added 3 eggs to it and nutritional yeast to try to just tap in, like probably close to 35 grams of protein,
Yeah.
but I didn't count it out and I don't know specifically like the amount. I'm just trying to eyeball it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's you know what is mostly protein, and you're able to, like I mean, that's why that's why I've always loved the Fab 4, right? Because 'Cause I'm like, "Okay, protein, fat, fiber, greens," like, I'm looking for that balance on my plate, or I'm looking for, like, the main categories, and you're like, "Okay, animal protein is mostly protein," like, that's pretty easy, and then you have a general idea of, like, these lentils and beans of, like, what you're getting there, but for me, the reason why I texted you, like, I'm having this on the side of my smoothie is because my life gets so crazy busy, like, it I am kind of bebopping from, like, feeding a baby to, like, jumping on a podcast to, like, getting on a call with my sister about a product to, like, going to do a pickup to coming back to making everyone lunch and then jumping back on another call or, like, it's kind of all over the place, and if I don't do that, I may turn around and it's 2 o'clock, and I'm like which is also why I like smoothies at lunch sometimes too, because the eggs are delicious at breakfast and easy to make, and you might have more time to, like, sneak that in, and a smoothie can be made in, like, 10 minutes, less
100%.
you know? But I got to a place where I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna, like, throw a side of sometimes 4 to 6 ounces of ground beef with my breakfast or leftover salmon from the night before or a turkey burger or a piece of chicken." Like, it can be super random, it might be leftover protein, but I did get in this routine of, like, making a 50-50 blend of ground beef and ancestral blend together and then just pounding pounding it with it, and it was, like, warm and salty, and it's, like, plain, but I would just I would have that with my smoothie, and I was probably hitting 50 grams in the morning, and then I knew, okay, like, at the minimum, I could hit 100 grams of protein the rest of the day, or
Mhm.
I'm really going for it, I can hit 120, 130 because 'cause I'm looking for, like, a a gram per pound of, like, uh, ideal body mass for me. And so,
Yeah.
like, I'd like, you know, if I could get to 130, that would be killer, but even, like, 100, I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like, I just and it was the craziest thing this time around. My hair didn't fall out, I don't have the little, like I don't know if because you're pregnant, you're probably, like, keeping all your juju, but If you
No.
look
I wish.
all your hair breaks off, your skin gets dry, like, you're just, like you feel like I felt like a raisin after both of my first 2, and this time around, I'm like, I don't know, like, my muscle mass feels, like, amazing, my hair hasn't fallen out, like, I I'm eating like an absolute athlete, and, uh the postpartum period with Toshin, I would say I would still consider myself, like, dying in postpartum, like, at 20 months after he was born, and this time around, I was, like, there at, like, 4 to 6. It was crazy.
That's amazing.
But I was also eating, like, in the very beginning, I was really going for it and getting a animal protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner on top of my breakfast smoothie, and then breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not at that level, but I am making a conscious effort because I think that most women undereat protein, especially during pregnancy when your needs continue to increase every trimester.
Mhm. And you're also, like, maybe dealing I don't know, did you have, protein aversions at all?
No, not in this pregnancy.
That's really
I've
nice.
been fine. I was so nauseous with McKinley and had a lot more of a challenge until, like, week 16, and this time it's much easier.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That is
Did
amazing.
you?
It got worse with me every single time, and I actually think it
Oh,
was depletion. Like, I think I felt so good with Sebastian because I we know that B6 deficiency is linked to more severe nausea, and I
uh-huh.
think I had B vitamin stores and I had nutrients a lot of nutrient stores going into Sebastian's pregnancy, and then I had a major, traumatic birth. I had major stress after that with his eczema, thrown basically into a book tour, nursing him, stopped nursing him and found out I was pregnant and stopped nursing him basically, like, went from nursing to pregnancy, like, right away. There was, like, no breaks. And then with Toshin, like, the same sort of thing. So, I don't know. I think my nutrient supply depletion got worse and worse and worse. Like, when Toshin postpartum with Toshin, I had to have iron infusions. Like, I had iron IVs because it was
I
so
remember.
that's also something women should know. Like, if you have a birth like, I just had a friend have a birth who lost liters of like, lost a lot of blood, and they were like, "Well, here's your iron supplement." And so many women in that situation will start to just take the iron supplement after, and their or their hemoglobin's so low and their ferritin's low and they feel horrible, and they're taking the supplement and it takes them 6 to 8 months to bring those levels back up. And most women stop taking that iron supplement in postpartum because it makes them constipated or they don't like the side effects. And so they're walking around with basically like anemia, feeling horrible on top of their postpartum experience. And luckily, like I have an amazing doctor who was like, no, let's just go get you an IV. But if anyone's listening and has like low levels of iron, like I definitely recommend that. You can get your levels right back up in like, you know, 2 infusions or three in like a 3 week period. And you feel like a completely different person.
100%. And I would say too, like, that came up when we were formulating neonatal was to, like, how much iron to include because some prenatals don't have any iron or have, like, the smallest amount. And neonatal has 18 milligrams, which, typically in pregnancy, it needs increase to 27, and then, like you said, once you're postpartum, your needs they technically go down by the RDA standards, but they could increase because of the blood loss and everything that you're going through. But the nice thing about the iron that's in Wenatal is that it's, a specific type called iron bisglycinate chelate that's, Ferrochel is the trademark brand, um, but it also helps with increasing the tolerance to the specific type of iron that I think is also one of the reasons that so many friends, once they start Wenatal are like, "Wow, I can't believe how well I'm tolerating this prenatal compared to others that I've tried in the past." So you may still need iron infusions, but I do think that, like, I always felt good knowing that I was at least getting 18 milligrams additional in Wenatal.
110%, and I'm so glad actually my it was my friend Michelle, and she was on Wenatal, that was her prenatal, and she's like, "Kelly, thank you so much for recommending that," because prior to getting pregnant with her second she just had her second son, we looked at her blood test, and I was like, you need to either pick an iron supplement or you need to take Wenatal with iron," and she, like, got on it, and she's like, "Thank I'm, like, so glad we looked at my blood test before this pregnancy because I probably would have had to have a blood transfusion after if I didn't have such good levels." So, like, just thinking
It's
about
so
that,
important to stay on t
chill.
yeah. It's so important, and it's amazing how many women aren't testing their nutrient levels. You know, nutrient deficiencies are such a common cause of so many adverse symptoms, and if you aren't feeling like yourself, even if you're 1 or 2 or 3 years postpartum, like, it continues to have a domino effect. So, I just can't recommend getting nutrient deficiency testing enough because, uh, I've run thousands of nutrient deficiency tests, and the number of people that I have seen that have 0 nutrient deficiencies, you can probably attest to this too. It's like maybe a handful of people in the last 10 years of all the people that I've worked with that have come out with no nutrient deficiencies. It's, like, astonishing that it isn't talked about more.
Totally. What's your favorite, nutrient deficiency test? Are you using Nutravail? Are you doing, like, a regular blood draw? What are you
Metabolomics is the one that I'm using now because it's just easier since you can collect it from home. Nutravail has a few additional markers that you can get because you're also doing blood, but metabolomics, you can get pretty much all of them.
okay.
Um,
And would they need
for
a practitioner like you for that, or can do they do DTC?
no, you need a practitioner.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
I don't know, is there one that you know of that you don't need a practitioner?
No, I think most of the stuff is like, you're just gonna pay out of pocket and it gets kinda crazy. So, I think just find someone like you, join a group. Yeah. Oh my god, okay, well, we're done because it's been 2 hours and I'm so sorry that I talked to you for 3, and you probably are like, "Wow, you just messed my whole day up, Kelly." Um, I
Not at
seriously
all.
love you so much. I'm so happy for you. I can't wait to see who this little human is going to be. I can't wait just to, like, see all of it. So happy for you. McKinley's so lucky to have you as such a well-rounded and balanced mama, and, it's just a pleasure. I love you.
Oh, Kelly, I love you too. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for you and your growing family and for you to be out of the
All done growing
postpartum
it, I
stage
think.
soon.
I'm, like, all done growing it, asterisk, I think. All right. Well, this was really fun. Hopefully, people get some good stuff out of it. We'll throw a link to your new software, your meal planning software, which I think would be just awesome to be like, here's the list. Someone else go buy the groceries. Yeah.
Exactly.
Task rabbit. No. But I appreciate it. We'll put links to everything that we talked about in today's podcast. And I'll snag some of those nutrients that you add to McKinley's bottle alongside her formula after the show, along with your prebiotic, probiotic, and all of the nutrients you mentioned. We'll put your stack in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Go have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.